How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good. Hey, so real quick to get us started, I'm gonna ask the same question. I'm gonna ask this every week, so you guys be prepared. What's something that you would like to share that you may have learned last week? Anyone, online, in person, whatever. I want us to try to reinforce what we're learning. Man, we gotta ramp up the game again, man. We're not teaching you guys anything.
Yeah, it's not y'all.
Yeah, quizzing them. Thank you.
It's not nice.
I really enjoyed the I didn't know before about the practice of going to the waters, to the river, or to the canal, to the lake.
Right.
So that was really interesting for me, learning that last week.
Excellent. Good to see you, Maxine. All right, very good. Thank you for sharing. So today's topic, last week we talked about Rosh Hashanah. Today's topic is Yom Kippur. And we're going to do the same thing like we did last time. I'm going to give you the biblical overview and aspects of things, and then Sabrina's going to get into the meat of the matter and talk about observance and preparing and all that kind of stuff. If we can have it quiet over there, this is hard for people online to hear, so we need to have it as quiet as possible. So if you will get your sheets, did we give out handout sheets?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, and people online, I just posted that a little while ago, so you'll have to grab that from the comments section on the event. So if you go to the events, go to the comments, you'll be able to download the handout for today. Let me know if you have any problems finding it. It should be right there. Okay. So today's topic is Yom Kippur. As you may or may not have already known, the term Yom Kippur means Day of Atonement. That's your first blank, actually. I'm going to dive straight in. Yom Kippur means Day of Atonement. Yom means day. Kippur means atonement. Okay. Biblically, however, you never see the phrase Yom Kippur. You see the phrase Yom HaKippurim, which means the Day of Atonements. It's plural. It's always in the plural. Okay. And the information that we have from the Bible about Yom Kippur, about what it is, what is to be done on it, appears in three places. Leviticus 16, that's your first blank. Leviticus 23, that's your second blank. And Numbers 29, that is your third blank. So Leviticus 16, it goes over the procedures of the Kohen Gadol, that's the high priest, and what happens with the two goats. Okay, so what's that?
What were the three?
Okay, the three passages are Leviticus 16, which details the procedures for the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, and the two goats. Leviticus 23, that's a general overview of how Yom Kippur is to be observed. And the third one is Numbers 29, and it describes the Musaf offerings. If you remember us talking a few weeks ago, Numbers 28 and 29 go over all of the special offerings that happen for Shabbat and the festivals, okay? So, Rosh Hashanah, we talked about last week, but we didn't really, for some reason, we didn't tell about the date. The date of Rosh Hashanah observed is the first and the second of the Hebrew month of Tishrei. Tishrei 1 and 2. Tishrei, you can say it either way. Tishrei, or just I. Tishrei 1 and 2. And remember, why is it 1 and 2? Because we turn our holidays into 2 days in the diaspora, but Rosh Hashanah is even observed 2 days in Israel as well. We talked about why in the first lesson if you want to do that. By the way, did anybody who physically attends Shalom Macon notice the bulletin board in the hallway of the lunar cycle? Yeah, now we have a visual aid to see the different phases of the moon outside the kids' classrooms. Yeah. Yeah, and it's got little things, little write-ups on each of the things describing them, okay? So we observe Rosh Hashanah for 2 days. So Yom Kippur is after that, 2 days of fasting? Wait a minute, no, I'm joking. Okay, so, if Rosh Hashanah is the first and the second day of Tishrei, when is Yom Kippur? Let's just read Leviticus 23, the passage that applies. So we're going to start in verse 25, Leviticus 23:25. And it says this, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, now, on the 10th day of this 7th month is the Day of Atonement. It shall be for you a time of holy convocation, and you shall afflict yourselves, not afflict yourselves, but afflict yourselves, and present a food offering to the Lord. And you shall not do any work on that very day, for it is a day of atonement. Atonements, really, to make atonement for you before the Lord your God. For whoever is not afflicted on that very day shall be cut off from his people. You may need a door monitor at all passes. You shall not do any work. It is a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwelling places. It shall be to you a Sabbath of solemn rest, and you shall afflict yourselves, not your neighbor, yourselves. On the 9th day of the month, beginning at evening, from evening to evening, shall you keep your Shabbat, your Sabbath. Okay? So, Yom Kippur is observed, this is your next blank, on Tishrei 10, the 10th of Tishrei. Yom Kippur is observed on the 10th of Tishrei, according to this. Starts in the evening of the 9th. Remember, in our very first lesson, we talked about the biblical reckoning of time. So the day starts when the sun goes down, the biblical day. So in the evening of the 9th would be the going out of the 9th day and into the 10th day. But what do we do on Yom Kippur? Okay, we read in this passage, and I emphasized it a couple times, it says it's a time of holy convocation in verse 27, and you shall afflict yourselves. What do we traditionally do on Yom Kippur?
Starve.
Good way to put it. Oh, you know what I'm gonna do? I forgot to do this. I'm gonna pin this because it's much easier for playback if we pin this for now. Okay. When we post these to YouTube, by the way, we're posting all of these on YouTube, and you can access them through the Shalom at Home network, and we have links to them there.
Hey, Larry,
Yes,
I have a question.
I have an
You
alibi.
said you should afflict yourself.
Right,
So where do we get the idea of fast?
exactly. That was my question.
I'm
yeah.
not asking this for you.
Yeah, there you go. So where do we get this idea? Because the scripture actually says, if you literally interpret the scripture that says afflict yourselves, it literally says to humble your soul, and that's your next blank. It literally means to humble your soul. And so, how do we get fasting out of this? Well, the sages interpreted this humbling of the soul to mean we deprive ourselves of the things that would make us comfortable, okay? And so food is a huge part of that. So fasting, and there's a few other restrictions that Sabrina will discuss, are what happens on Yom Kippur, okay? But fasting is the primary mode that we observe Yom Kippur, okay? Now, what happened in the temple on those days, on the day of Yom Kippur? We have in the afternoon on Yom Kippur here at the synagogue, we go over the detailed account of what happened there on that day by reading the account from the Mishnah that details all the things that the priest would do, and preparing and going through the process, and exactly what happened in the offerings he would offer, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so we're not going to go over it today, but you can read about it in Leviticus 16. It's an elaborate ceremony involving 2 goats that I'm sure you guys are somewhat familiar with. But Leviticus 16, in a nutshell, tells us that the goal of these Yom Kippur offerings and what's going on is twofold. And here are the next blank. The goat that is released into the wilderness is for the sins of the people. You have two goats, right? The one that's released into the wilderness is for the sins of the people. Now, the goat that is slaughtered, you would think would be a sacrifice to cover sins. That's what we normally think of, right? But guess what? It's not. It is, the goat that is slaughtered is to cleanse the sanctuary and the altar. The goat that is slaughtered is to cleanse the sanctuary and the altar. By the way, anybody that comes in and out, you have to pull the door and then lift up on the handle to get it to stay. Dave is gonna fix that this week though.
Yes,
So with that in mind, what about Yeshua?
That's all just.
You know, it brings up all kinds of problems immediately when you start thinking about that, right? Okay, so if the animal that was slaughtered was not for the sins of the people,
Right.
then how does Yeshua fit into this? Another question is, because Yeshua is this sacrifice, he's an atonement. Yom Kippur is about atonement. But Yeshua didn't die on Yom Kippur. He died on Passover. So what's up with that? We got more questions we got answered, right? Okay. We do.
Welcome to
Yeah,
the-
welcome to Messianic Judaism.
Right.
Okay, and there's some people that say, well, didn't his work replace all of this? Why do we still have to do this? You know? So, to answer those questions, I'm gonna refer you somewhere else. Because we don't have time to cover it all. It's not that we can't talk about it. But this class is very limited in time and scope, and this is an overview, and I gotta give it over to my partner in crime here. And she's got some really good stuff to talk about. But if you want to learn more about this, Rabbi Damien did an excellent series, but it's only available in audio at this point. I have a feeling he's going to reteach it or something close to it in the future. But right now, it's only available in audio. So if you go to our podcast, go to our SoundCloud page for Shalom Macon, you'll find a series, a playlist called A Better Covenant, Yeshua and the Sacrificial System. That's the name of the series. A Better Covenant, Yeshua and the Sacrificial System. And he has, I can't remember how many lessons are involved in that. It's probably half a dozen or more. Okay. Talk about this topic. So if you're curious about those questions, take a look at that. So with this in mind, Daniel Lancaster, did you introduce that book last week?
Yes.
Yeah, the whole
Do it
day.
again.
Right, we're gonna do this again. So I recommend this book. We recommend this book. It's called The Holy Days by Daniel Lancaster, D. Thomas Lancaster. From First Streets of Zion. You can get it at ffoz.com, maybe even Amazon these days. But anyway, I love this quote that he has in this, talking about Yeshua's relationship to the Day of Atonement. He says, on the Day of Atonement, we rehearse Yeshua's work on our behalf as we concern ourselves with the cleansing, atoning work of Messiah that has wrought for us forgiveness, pardon, and right standing with God. So we sort of almost, I don't know if reenact is the right word, but we engage with this on Yom Kippur. Okay? And the last thing, did I have page 2 or just, I think I had 3? I think I just had 2. Okay. The last thing that I'm going to cover before I hand it over is a couple of, really probably just one myth. How many of you guys have ever heard that well, first of all, I guess it will be 2 things. So the high priest, he went into the Holy of Holies. First of all, he only went one day of the year, and that's correct. But he went in there multiple times during that day. And the second thing is, what does he have at the edges of his garment?
Start with a T, right?
No, well, on his regular garments, but this
Okay.
one.
Bells.
Good, the bells and the pomegranates. Okay, so I'm sure you've heard that the bells were, when he goes in there, you can hear him moving around, you make sure he's still kicking.
Alive.
He's still alive. You make sure he doesn't go in unworthily and keel over. And so these bells are to hear and to make sure he's okay and everything. Has anybody ever taken gold and clinked gold together? These are made out of gold. And guess what? I don't even know if they had the clacker on there, but anyway, if they did, gold on gold is sort of like that, maybe. Dull, very dull sound, okay? So it's not like they could hear it. He's inside another place, okay? So that really has no foundation. The second thing you'll hear is that he had a rope tied around him when he went in. Either a rope around his waist or a rope around his ankle, okay? Well, oh, by the way, the garments that had the pomegranates and the bells, he wasn't even wearing when he went into the Holy of Holies. I forgot to mention that, okay? He can only go into the Holy of Holies, and we can read it right in the scripture. Leviticus 16, I believe it is. When he goes in, he has to be in his linen garments. That's the only thing he can wear. White, basic, unadorned linen garments. And are you gonna go into more of that? That's why. And we try to imitate that as well. Anyway, and so that has no bearing. Now the rope, this is the issue too. Did he have a rope tied around it? So the thing that we get that from there, it's like, where did that come from? It's actually a quote from a Kabbalistic source called the Zohar. Okay, and the Zohar said he had a rope tied around his ankle when he went in. But if you've ever read anything from the Zohar could say the sun is made out of cheese. Okay, and the reason why is because the Zohar is never meant to be taken literally. It's all a mystical metaphor. Okay, and so when they say things like this, it's saying basically he's going into such a holy place and going to be experiencing something so spiritual that he needs something to tether him to reality. Okay, and that's the sort of the takeaway of that passage. It's not meant to be. A lot of people read stuff in rabbinic writing and they try to take it literally when it's a metaphor or it's used in a different context. Okay, we get it all out of whack. So that's the reference to that. So you can put those aside, put them in your Balderdash filing cabinet, and hold on to those for another day. At this time, I'm going to pass it on this lovely lady and let her take us the rest of the way. You're going to correct me on something though first.
No
okay.
correction needed.
Surprise,
Wait.
A plus. No, when we were preparing for this, so Yom Kippur is the holiest day of the year. It's when the holiest person, the high priest, gets to go into the holiest place, the Holy of Holies, one time a year. And it's one of those things. I was trying to think, how can we relate the holiness of it and the sanctity of it, the experience of it. And it reminded me that when Darren was reading about Yeshua fulfilling Yom Kippur and being our atonement, that's what it took me back to. If you can stop, if you can't right now, today, just at some point, think back. It might not be too far back in your past for some of you. Some of us, we got to go way back. But think about the beginning. And if I get emotional, I'm sorry. But think about the beginning of your relationship with God. How that started through Yeshua. I mean, that's why we're all here. We all have a different story. But that place of when you come to him in repentance and you realize who he is and who you are, and you want this to start this relationship with him, but you need cleansed, right? I mean, he's a holy God, and he can't exist with sin. And so at least I was taught, sometimes we're not taught that in certain sects of Christianity or denominations, and it's getting even different today, but just that there is a step of repentance that's supposed to be in that process. You don't do it before you come to him, because he wants you. He wants a relationship with you as you are. And yes, now let's start working together. Let's work out our salvation in fear and trembling. But when you come to him and start that relationship, at least there's that moment, I think, for all of us, that you just confess, like you just lay it out and you experience that initial forgiveness of your sins, like your past is wiped clean. And that feeling of just pure forgiveness and love and closeness to him that you've never, it's the first time. That's what we're rehearsing. We're getting to do that and try to get there again. It's like almost like recalling our first love in a way, you know, like we're reenacting that. And for us, in a way, I mean, I don't know what it was like to be in the temple and see all this, be a part of the literal functioning of this holiday and what the high priest was doing. We can only imagine it, read it and imagine it. But I think because Yeshua being our high priest in the heavenlies, we do get to see what we, in a way, even deeper and even greater. You know, the book of Hebrews does that. It compares. It's like, if this can happen in the earthly temple, how much more so? If the high priest can do this for us on the earth, in the earthly temple, how much more so Yeshua, our high priest of the order of Melchizedek? And we can't go into all of that, but I just wanted to set that stage of the holiness and the sanctity of this day. And just like we cannot describe to someone really what it's like to have that forgiveness of Yeshua that comes through him, through his sacrifice. It's like the same thing. You just have to come experience Yom Kippur with us, or where you're at. You can go somewhere there, but it's just a very different day. Like Dave said, you're starving yourself. You're hungry. Your body doesn't like it. But as we know, with the practice of fasting, it is a time where, because food keeps our soul and body intact, right? If we don't eat, eventually we will die. Our soul will depart, we'll separate. So food really keeps us connected, food and water. You know, we got to have those substances to keep our soul and body together. But Yom Kippur is a day where we are, in a way, emulating the angels. And the angels are not human beings. They don't need food and water, or sleep, or clothing, or such things, or they don't have luxuries and pleasures. And so we are emulating the angels in a way. And so when we deprive our flesh of food on this day, these are from the when we're not eating, it is that this is where our soul begins to be elevated. We're humbled. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself, aren't I? I think that I'm skipping number 6. I think this is number. Oh well, we'll get there. Okay, I'm gonna go to my notes now. But I just wanted to set that stage of what we're experiencing, and you can't describe it. We're going to talk about it, but it is an experience that you must personally go through. So I think Darren referred to this term. So in between Tishrei 1 and 2 and Tishrei 10, so that's between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we have what's called the Yamim Noraim. So number 6, the phrase Yamim Noraim refers to the 10 days that begin with Rosh Hashanah and end with Yom Kippur. So 10 is your blank. So these 10 days have a special and even more intensified and special focus of seeking out relationships, seeking out either people or going before the Lord and seeking forgiveness or confessing or trying to make restitution, making things right. So it's like a intensified time.
More than a little, you're saying?
Right. I mean, you just have more time. And so the Yamim Noraim means in Hebrew, in English, it means the days of awe, AWE, like the days of awe or awesomeness, if you will. Days of awe is what Yamim Noraim mean. And so they're just kind of a special time. So number 7, during the Yamim Noraim, we increase our preparation for the Day of Atonement by seeking, let me make sure I'm saying the right words here. Yes, by seeking forgiveness is your first blank from others. Letting go of grudges. That's your next blank is grudges. And releasing others from offenses they have committed against us, offenses. So if you were with us in our service today, Rabbi Damien's message was powerful and exactly this. This is what we are to be focusing on. Looking at those things in our past, maybe in our present that we're dealing with and struggling with. We're going to keep moving because I know, yeah, it's already halfway through our time. So number 8, Yom Kippur is a day, we already said, to humble and elevate the soul. Humble and elevate the soul.
Sounds contradictory. I
It
think.
sounds contradictory to humble and elevate, right? But that's what we're doing. We're humbling our soul, afflicting ourselves, but at the same time, it allows us to be elevated spiritually. So this is accomplished through 2 main components of the day, and that's prayer and fasting. So that's what we're going to spend the rest of our time on talking is about prayers and fasting, because there's really nothing else to do on Yom Kippur or sleep. I mean, you can sleep the whole day through. And jumping ahead, I'll just say this. No, I'll jump ahead. I'll mess myself up. We'll get to it. I'll cover it, but
you want me to
it's
benefit?
okay. It's okay to sleep. Let me just say that right now. It's okay to take a nap. If you're here, you will see folks finding a place to lay down, and that's okay. And then there is a break in the day where that's absolutely, if you need to do that, do that. So Yom Kippur, we've got fasting, we have special prayers, we have some of the prayers we always pray on Sabbath and holidays, but then we have special prayers that we're praying just for this specific day. Prayers of confession, repenting. It's a time to really just be raw, emotionally raw if you can. Asking for forgiveness. It's an elevated time that's really like no other day of the year. So typically on Shabbat and other holidays, we have 4 prayer services. They start on the eve of the holiday. That's the first one. Then we go to the second in the morning. Then we have an additional, which is the Musaf. And then we'll follow up in the afternoon with the Mincha. And we do have all of those on Yom Kippur, but there's a 5th one. So number 9, there are 5 different services that take place throughout the 25-hour period of Yom Kippur. Why do we say 25? There's only 24 hours in a day. Well, we give it a little extra just to make sure, right? We don't want to fudge because we read, this is a serious holiday for the nation of Israel. This is a very serious holiday. And so we don't want to miss any time. So we just go a little extra after the sun goes down.
We do that really on any type of.
Oh, that's true. Okay, just to be sure we're not infringing on.
That's why we have the candle lightings. Usually you'll see 18 minutes before. And then you'll have Havdalah usually, depends on who you're listening, who's in whose opinion or whatever, but roughly 45 minutes somewhere around there after sundown. And that gives us that extra window to make sure on either end.
So if this is your first time, we have some folks visiting for the first time. We're saying a lot of words and a lot of Hebrew words. So just bear with us. I mean, it's okay. You're not gonna get all this, and
We
that's
can
okay.
talk after class
And
and
we
have
can
questions.
stay for questions like we did last time. So number 10, the 5 services of Yom Kippur, we'll just throw these out there. So we have the Erev service, which is the eve of Yom Kippur. Erev means eve, and there's things we're gonna be doing then. Shacharit, it means morning, and that's the morning service. Then Musaf is right after that. There's no break. You go straight into Musaf. And that word means additional. So Sabbath, holidays, including Yom Kippur, the Torah is clear, do no work, right? Except for the priesthood. They don't get that day off. The priesthood is working in the temple on Shabbat, on holidays. There's sacrifices that the Torah requires. And then there's additional sacrifices. There's sacrifices every day, but then on Sabbath and holidays, there's additional sacrifices. So they've got even more work. They need more priests on duty. And so that's what that word means, musaf. It's additional. These are the special extra things that go with this holiday. And then mincha, it literally means meal offering. It's a specific offering in the temple. It's the meal offering, mincha. But we call it the afternoon prayers. And it's the main gift.
That's, I think it can also mean gift.
Oh, it can mean gift, okay. And then ne'ilah, that Hebrew word ne'ilah means closing. That's your blank. It means closing of the gate. So we had Rosh Hashanah, the books are opened. God, the judge, the true judge, is sitting upon his throne. He's looking at every human being, looking at our lives. And this is where the gates are beginning to close. We've had this time, we've had 10 days, and the gates are closing on this day of Yom Kippur. And instead of going down through the day, you will notice, God forbid we have headaches and things like that, but if sometimes we do, we can't, bless you, our physical is just, not doing great. But we can talk about the fasting part here in just a minute, but the soul, your soul is so much more elevated at the end of the day. And there is a joy that is coming, and that you feel, and this excitement and this joy it comes at the end. And so it's not a sad thing, the closing, it's not a sad thing. It's a beautiful and joyful time. So number 11, we'll just run through some of the special prayers that you will hear on Yom Kippur. There's so much to all of these, but I'm just gonna list them. And on the eve of Yom Kippur is when Kol Nidre is said, and that means all vows, not vowels. Almost said vowels.
Like
Vows,
vows and oaths.
yeah, VOWS, vows. Kol means all, and Nidre is a vow. We're not gonna go into, we don't have time to go into what all these mean. So when we say the Shema prayer, Shema Yisrael, okay, there's the second part right after that, the next part right after that, we always say in a hushed tone, an undertone, not out loud, right? Either sometimes people cover their mouths or they just whisper it. That's because that is a response that is for the angels, in the heavenlies, their response in praise to God. So we're not angels, but we say it in a hushed tone normally. On Yom Kippur, because we are, in a way, elevating ourselves like the angels, we then say this out loud with the angels, and it's just really neat. It's a powerful thing that we are joining our voices with the angels on those things that we don't, the rest of the year, we do not do. So that's the Baruch Shem Kavod Malkuto Le'olam Va'ed. We say that out loud every time we say the Shema. That's a special thing we do. The prayer Al Chet, which means for the sin. This is where we are listing sins and we hit our chest and it's like, just, we're trying to really get this, right? We're trying to really focus on these different things we're saying. And that happens during the Amidah, the standing prayer. The Vidui means confession. That's your blank, confession. And this is probably my favorite. This is my favorite prayer. I think it's one of my favorites of this day. And last year, Rabbi Damien, I think this came from aish.com, aish.com. That's what I'm saying. A Jewish website. And it's kind of like sort of like a modern version of it to help us really, because sometimes to connect with it. Because sometimes the words are too lofty or don't really they don't connect with us in our everyday life today. So this is where we say Ashamnu, and we go through. Actually, for Hebrew students, it's an acrostic. We're going from the Aleph to the Beit to the Gimel to the Dalet. It's like A, B, C, D. We're going through these sins and confessing these things.
Everything we've done from A to Z. In a sense.
So like Ashamnu, I'm just going to throw out a couple of examples. Ashamnu means we would say we've become guilty. We've destroyed our sense of spirituality. But then, well, what does that mean? Things like we've exposed ourselves to things that ruin our sensitivities to spiritual growth. We've wasted time and inward focus looking at others' lives instead of fixing our own lives. We've viewed and shared material that's unbefitting. We struggle to find time for the people and things that matter the most in life, yet we freely waste time on meaningless things. You know, that's where it's hitting, right? We want these things to hit us and it's like a mirror, you know?
We do that actually.
And we actually do that, yeah. And so these are things, it's like looking at ourselves. It helps us to see and think that, because sometimes we just don't think about things, or we can't think of all these different things. And it's not like we're trying to beat ourselves down, but it's that honest look at our own lives spiritually.
Like his grace, I'm sorry,
No,
but his grace to even allow for that, because the hustle and bustle of life, we're always moving around or whatnot. This really, not forces in a bad way, but this is the time you get all of it out, everything you've done, like, getting right with God is intentional. Like, and for all of us who believe it, like, you know what I mean? Where else are we gonna be at? Like, this is it right here.
right.
And I just look at it like his grace, you know what I mean? Like, we're gonna slow down
That's good.
and we're gonna acknowledge these things, so I just love it.
It's good. So anyway, that's the Vidui. We also do Yom on Yom Kippur, and there's other times, every holiday, there's this specific service where we remember loved ones that have passed, specifically parents. If you have both parents living in a traditional setting, you actually leave the sanctuary. You go out of the room, out of the sanctuary, and only leave those people together that have lost a parent or both parents. And it is a special time. I love how Judaism incorporates those things into our lives, because they're with us, right? Those kinds of losses and things are always with us. And these special holidays are no exception. Another prayer is the Unatana Tokef. That means let us speak of the awesomeness. And this is a really powerful prayer as well. And there's a really moving story that goes with this prayer. If you want to look that up, just type it in and you'll get stuff on the internet. Another prayer we will do many times is the Avinu Malkeinu, which means our Father, our King. And we sing that as well. And then we also go over the 13 attributes of mercy that's given in the Torah, and I don't have the reference there. Oh, thank you. It's Exodus 34, 6-7. It's, oh, it's on your paper. Oh, okay, it's not on mine, that's yours. So the 13 attributes of mercy. On Yom Kippur, we use a special prayer book called or Siddur called a Machzor. I'll spell that, Machzor, Machzor. A Machzor is
You also
a,
hear it called a moxer.
or Machzor. Machzor. The Machzor, has all this in there, so it's all in one place, and, it's a nice thing. There's so much in it that, as a congregation, we don't do everything that goes.
And I
with all
meant
of
to
it.
bring one in, but basically, I mean, think about this, what do I do? Well, you just go buy this book. You know, it tells you everything to do.
Right. So we talked about, so that's kind of talking about prayer, and now we're gonna move into fasting. So number 13, we fast to afflict or humble our souls and to emulate, we already said, the angels who have no physical needs. So,
Can I interject real quick? I think this is a huge point, because so many times, and I'm not saying you feel this way, because you're just expressing what everybody else is saying, but we starve ourselves, you know, but too many times we do. I mean, we're only focused on, like, well, we have to go without food. Instead of being focused on the opposite of, we get to, in this case, we get to be like the angels. You know, we get to put aside the things that we normally spend so much time on to focus on our spiritual connection with God, you know? So I just want to hit that real quick, sort of flip that around.
but there is no, what's the word? There should not ever feel bad that, yeah, that you can't, because if you're afflicting yourself, you're doing what you're supposed to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, if whatever amount of affliction, we're gonna talk about that. But it's, and there are some years that, especially me as a mom, it's all I could do to just get through the day, you know,
Right.
just get through the day, and you know, because I gotta take care of kids on Yom Kippur, and that's not easy. And so anyway, we'll talk about the nitty gritty of that in a little bit, but. So besides the fasting, there's some other restrictions that go along with Yom Kippur. These aren't listed on your notes. But, so with the fasting means absolutely no food, absolutely no drink or beverage, nothing is going in your mouth. It's that level of fasting. And some other customs, things that you would refrain from are,
I need to get that.
oh, Trent, is that right now? Do you have a question? You can unmute, or if you want to hold on to it. If you don't mind holding on to that, we'll talk about that.
If you can put something in the chat or raise your hand, that would help us see you too.
So other things that we refrain from, wearing leather shoes, not belts, whatever, it's actually the shoes. Because, and this is one of those customs that have just continued to be passed down, because leather shoes used to be your luxury, a comfort, you know, it was a thing to have a pair of leather shoes, right? So that's a continued custom, is to not wear leather shoes. So you'll see people in flip-flops and tennis shoes that don't have leather and things like that, just different kinds of shoes than your normal nice, those would be leather, right? Yeah. So no bathing or washing. Angels don't stink, they don't need a bath. So no bathing or washing.
Wash up the night before.
Yeah.
Wash real good, extra deodorant going into this thing. There's no fancy lotions or creams, no fancy lotions or creams. No, there's no anointing or lotions or creams or things like that.
Fancy stuff.
Yeah.
Right. No gold is worn. And you will see women without makeup and jewelry. And the other restriction is no marital relations. So these are all things that are normally part of our lives, but this one day we do different to make it different. And holy means different. That's what that word means. It means set apart and different. And so it is a very different day in how we conduct ourselves. So, number 14, we'll just go straight into this. It's customary to wear white clothing
That's your blank.
to also emulate the angels and the high priest garments that are worn on Yom Kippur. Like Darren said, there's only four things they wear, and they're all white and they're linen. They have their undergarments, they have their outer garment, they have a sash, and they have a turban. And it's all white and it's linen. And so, the other significance of that, well, typically, you know, the high priest is decked out. I mean, the high priest gets all the bling, no, not
Mhm.
everything. You've got the breastplate, you've got the, I forgot to use the word,
The seats.
the teeth, you've got just the dyes, the colors, the gold, the pomegranates and the gold bells and on the ephod, you know, all the
We're
things.
talking about literally $1 million suit.
Yeah, yeah, this is the high priest, but on Yom Kippur, white linen, and that's it. So, Jewish men will wear what's called a kittel on Yom Kippur, and it's a white, kind of like a robe kind of thing that ties. You'll see Rabbi Damien wear one, Lance will wear one. And this is actually what Jewish men are buried in. They're buried in their kittel. And so we know Yeshua, when he was buried, he was also wrapped in linen. And so all those things are images tied to Yom Kippur that we can carry with us in this holiday.
One of the things to interject is if we're wearing our burial clothes, it's also symbolic of us dying to ourselves that day.
Yes, dying to ourselves, and that someday we will die, but also like Yeshua, we will be resurrected as well. And so all of these things are themes tied into Yom Kippur. Let's see. Okay, so let's talk about about the fasting part. Because a lot of times people have questions on that because we have either things with our health, or what about pregnancy and,
I'm taking this.
or I take medicine, I need to take something with my medicine, I can't have an empty stomach. Okay, I'm not here to make any of those judgment calls. But I can only tell you what, is that I'm aware of that comes from Judaism. And then, in Judaism, it's always consult your rabbi. The ultimate thing is if you are under a doctor's care, you consult your doctor and you consult your rabbi on these kinds of detailed questions. But, so before going into the fast, it's customary to have at least one, if not two, pretty good sized meals on the day before. And so you have a festive meal leading into Yom Kippur, and those are usually, you don't want them to be too salty and too spicy, you know, those, you wanna prepare yourself.
Don't
And
make
have,
yourself thirsty.
right, not be too more thirsty than you need to be. It's good to, if you are accustomed to drinking caffeine daily, it's good to start like a week before even, or even
Weaning.
whatever, however far ahead you need to plan to wean yourself kind of to the point where you don't want to have a headache. That's the worst, to have one of those bad headaches, you can't even think straight. And, so weaning yourself off of coffee, caffeine, sugar, anything that you think is gonna be like make it harder on you. You can kind of prepare better. Okay. I'm not gonna go any further on that part. Okay. So I will say, I'll throw this out there because we have a little bit of time. It's not, for a Jewish child, it's not observed until they are bar and bat mitzvah age, right? So it's not forbidden for someone younger, but about age 9 is when they, a Jewish family will start, okay, it's time to, they'll postpone breakfast, you know, like the morning of Yom Kippur, they wake up, it's like, oh, we're not gonna eat breakfast right now, we're gonna wait a little while. And just begin that gradual year by, you know, from age 9, they start gradually getting them prepared so that by the age 12 and 13, they will be required to do the full thing. So, but as soon as a child is aware enough that you can say, this is a special day, you can start by just not giving them treats. They don't get cookies today, right? I mean, you can go without a cookie one day, or whatever treat it is. You know, you can do that kind of when they're younger than 9.
Right.
So, you know, treats and things like that, you can say, we're not gonna eat that today because this is a special day for the Lord. And so as we're fasting through the day and we're trying to get through the day, like I said, there's a time that you can nap. And it is said that it's better for you, if you have to stay home and stay in the bed in order to do the fast, that is better than to try to use your strength to get to synagogue and participate in all the standing and all of the things. It's actually better to just stay home and be in the bed and observe the fast that way. So as number 15, oh no. Yeah, we'll go there. As Yom Kippur ends and the heavenly gates are closed, we hear one last long triumphant blast of the shofar. That's your blank. We get to hear the shofar one last time. And now that our souls are cleansed and filled with God's presence, we joyfully break the fast together with a festive meal. So then we will begin eating, and you know your body, listen to your body. Don't just jump in, and I would advise start with some water, get some water, and just start eating slowly and ease your way into it. But you know yourself and you know your body and you know what's good. It's also customary to begin instruction on the sukkah, because that's what this is all culminating in, right? We've gone through Rosh Hashanah, we start really looking at ourselves, and then we're like, oh wow, I got some stuff I need to get right. And we're just working on that. And then we have Yom Kippur, where our slate is wiped clean. And we get to just feel that, again, that fresh start with the Lord. And then we get to celebrate with our 8 days, 9 days of Sukkot, and the ending of that with Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah. And it's just a beautiful celebration and culmination of getting to rejoice with the Lord in that special time that we've gone through. So that is, yeah, so we'll introduce that. We did not come up with this little phrase here, but it stuck with us wherever we heard it long ago. And you can put it up there. So for those of us who are not Jewish, and even if you are Jewish and this is all new to you, like we weren't born in a Jewish family. We weren't born into this. We don't know. We're just starting. And each year it's like, okay, gotta relearn. And so we say this little phrase, do a chicken. But if you say it fast enough, do a chicken, do a chicken, do a chicken, do a chicken, do. So do a chicken do, right? Do what you can do. where you are. And it may just be that this year you're just learning, like, I didn't even know I didn't even know this was in the Bible, or I may have heard of it, but I didn't know anything about it. And it's just a level of awareness this year. Like literally, we all are in a different place in our journey, and there is no, there's no condemnation, there's no expectation. This is a thing that is between you and the Lord. And I like to say, be gracious to yourself and to others, and be gradual. This is a gradual thing. You can't jump in. You may not be able to jump in and do everything. You won't be able to jump in and do everything. It's okay. Like I said, there's some years it was all I could do to just get through this day.
You ever seen the movie, What About Bob? Baby steps.
Yes, there you go. Baby steps. That's a good
Baby
way-
steps.
a good way to say it.
Okay, we're gonna wrap it up here in just a second, but we'll stick around and answer questions. But I do want to say, hopefully you've heard our hearts. I don't know, I'm just really emotional. I think this is a really special time to connect with the Lord. We're in a wonderful, amazing season. And we have many opportunities to grow closer to Him and to grow closer to one another. And we can remove all the barriers between us and others and us and the Lord. And I just want to encourage you to take advantage of this time, not waste it, and do whatever you can to press in to those relationships and make the most of it. So if you need to leave, feel free. This will formally end our class. We're gonna open it up for questions. I'm gonna take questions from online in the house as well. Thank you guys for joining us. This video will be posted online. If you'd like to refer back to it or share it with someone. We are not gonna make it publicly available on YouTube. You won't be listed on YouTube, but you can share the link. Feel free to share the link